The Cauldron of Stars was the heart of the Cathar Imperium, and its heart was beating with a feverish, exultant rhythm. From the polished obsidian of the Emperor's skybox to the cheapest standing room perches carved into the native rock of the asteroid citadel, 100,000 voices merged into a single, deafening roar. The air, meticulously recycled, still carried the faint, electric tang of the kinetic barriers shimmering above the arena floor, and the thick, musky scent of a species primed for spectacle. Emperor Valerius Malachar, seventh of his name, leaned forward in his grav throne, the articulated plates of his formal carapace clicking softly. His four powerful arms rested on the throne's obsidian arms, his gaze fixed on the shimmering expanse of sand below. Beside him, Grand Vizier Lyraxus shifted, his own thinner, more scholarly frame exuding a nervous energy that contrasted sharply with the Emperor's placid authority. "They are a fragile-looking species, Your Eminence," Lyraxus murmured, his voice a dry rasp. The reports from the contact cadre were not exaggerating. So little natural armor, no visible claws or mandibular weapons. To send one to the rite of greeting, it feels less like an offering of strength and more like a sacrifice. Malachar's massive head, a testament to Cathar evolution with its crested brow and powerful jaws, tilted slightly. "They are a new piece on the great galactic board, Lyraxus. Their formal title is the Terran Alliance. They call themselves humans, a soft name for a soft species, but they have ambition. Their ships, while primitive by our standards, push at the borders of our established territories. This greeting is a necessary calibration, a demonstration of our mercy in granting a swift end," Lyraxus countered. "A demonstration of the chasm that lies between their ambition and our reality," the Emperor corrected, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through the throne itself. "They must understand their place. We offer them a chance to show their spirit in the cauldron, the highest honor we can bestow upon a new acquaintance. Their chosen warrior will face Korlag. He will die with more honor than he can possibly comprehend." Down on the sands, the subject of their discussion was being heralded. The arena's master of ceremonies, a flamboyant Cathar named Xylo whose subdermal illuminations pulsed in time with his booming voice, was painting a vivid picture for the roaring crowd. "And now, from the newly encountered star system they call Sol, from a world they name Earth, we receive their champion, a representative of the bipedal mammals known as humans," Xylo bellowed, stretching the alien word for dramatic effect. The crowd responded with a wave of mixed cheers and derisive laughter. A gate hissed open, not the grand portcullis from which the Cathar champions emerged, but a small, unassuming side entrance typically used by arena staff. From it, a lone figure walked into the incandescent glare of the artificial suns that lit the cauldron. His name was Elias Thorn. He wore simple, dark gray trousers and soft-soled boots. His torso was bare, revealing a pale topography of lean muscle and old, silvery scars. He was not large even for a human. He carried no shield, no helmet, no gleaming plates of composite armor. In his right hand, held loosely at his side, was his only weapon, a blade, no longer than his forearm, thin and brutally simple. It was a stiletto, a weapon so archaic and understated that the Cathar, with their love for power scythes and plasma casters, barely recognized it as a tool of war. The crowd's amusement intensified. They were accustomed to warriors clad in powered exoskeletons, their forms bristling with energy projectors and vibro blades. They were used to a pageantry of power, a visual language of might and lethality. Elias Thorn was a sentence fragment in a library of epics. He looked less like a warrior and more like a victim who had wandered into the wrong place at the wrong time. Xylo, sensing the crowd's mood, leaned into it. A bold strategy from the newcomer. Perhaps their species' skin is tougher than it appears, or perhaps their spirit burns so brightly it requires no armor. Let us see if that spirit can withstand the fury of the unbroken. From the grand portcullis opposite, the ground trembled. With a deafening clang of metal and a guttural roar that shook the very dust on the arena floor, Korlag the Unbroken emerged. Korlag was a monument to Cathar martial pride. Standing over 3 meters tall, his thick, chitinous exoskeleton was augmented with plates of gleaming, crimson-lacquered durasteel. Each of his 4 powerful arms wielded a different instrument of destruction. A serrated power scythe crackled with energy in his upper right hand. A heavy, tower shield was strapped to his upper left. His lower arms brandished a spiked gauntlet and a short, heavy cleaver designed for brutal, disabling chops. He was a walking fortress, a perfect fusion of biological power and technological supremacy. He was the victor of over 200 contests, the living embodiment of the Cathar ideal of glorious combat. He stomped onto the sand, his every movement a display of raw power, and let out another roar. The crowd roared back, a unified wave of adoration and bloodlust. The kinetic barriers above the arena shimmered, absorbing the sheer sonic force of the acclaim. Ilia's thorn did not react. He did not raise his blade, he did not adopt a flashy stance. He simply stood there, his weight balanced on the balls of his feet, his breathing slow and even. His eyes, the only part of him that seemed truly alive, were fixed on Korlag. He was not looking at the champion, the symbol, the spectacle. He was looking at a collection of anatomical parts, in the Emperor's box, Lyrax's side. "It is a lamb to the slaughter, your eminence." I almost feel a pang of pity. They clearly did not understand the nature of the invitation. "No," Malachar rumbled, his ancient eyes narrowed. "They understood, look at him, he is not afraid, that is curious." The ceremonial chimes echoed, signaling the start of the contest. The kinetic barriers sealing the arena entrances became fully opaque. The show had begun. Korlag, as was his custom, decided to entertain the crowd first. He charged, but not at full speed. It was a thundering, ground-shaking advance designed to intimidate, to showcase his unstoppable momentum. He held his shield high, his power scythe humming, a crimson engine of death bearing down on the fragile human. Ilias did not brace. He did not try to meet the charge. In the final second before impact, when the shadow of the Vex champion was about to swallow him whole, he moved. It was not a dramatic leap or a desperate scramble. It was a short, sharp, economical pivot. He took 2 quick steps to his left, his body turning sideways, presenting the smallest possible target. Korlag, expecting to smash through his opponent, instead thundered past, his momentum carrying him several meters across the sand. The crowd chuckled. A clever dodge. The little creature was nimble. The Vex champion grunted in annoyance, the sound amplified by his helmet's speakers. He turned, kicking up a plume of sand, and swung his massive power scythe in a wide, horizontal arc designed to cleave a lesser being in two. The energy blade left a shimmering trail in the air. Again, Ilias moved. Not backward, but forward. He dropped into a low crouch, the lethal arc of the scythe passing harmlessly over his head with centimeters to spare. He was now inside Korlag's optimal range, too close for the huge weapon to be used effectively. Korlag snarled and brought his lower arms into play, smashing down with the spiked gauntlet. Ilias swayed back just enough for the blow to punch a hole in the air where his head had been, and then flowed forward again, a ghost in the machine. For a full minute, this dance continued. Korlag, a being of overwhelming force, found himself unable to land a single blow. He was swinging at air, punching holes in space. Ilias was a phantom, always where the attack was not, moving with a liquid grace that was utterly alien to the Cathar, whose movements were predicated on strength and armored resilience. The crowd's mood began to shift. The initial amusement was giving way to a low murmur of impatience. They came for a glorious, bloody spectacle, not a masterclass in evasion. "The human is agile," Xylo boomed, trying to keep the energy high. "A slippery foe, but agility cannot win a battle. It can only delay the inevitable. How long can he maintain this dance before the might of Korlag prevails?" In his box, Emperor Malachar leaned forward even further, his claws unconsciously scoring faint lines into the obsidian. "He is not just dodging, Lyraxis. Watch his eyes. He is reading him. He is mapping him." Elias had seen enough. He had a complete mental blueprint of Korlag's movements. The slight hip rotation before a scythe swing. The way the lower left arm always followed the upper right. The telltale tensing of the massive shoulder muscles before a downward smash. He had measured the champion's reach, his speed, the rhythm of his fury. Korlag, enraged by the laughter that was now trickling down from the stands, abandoned finesse entirely. He bellowed and charged again, this time leading with his massive shield, intending to simply run Ilias down and crush him against the arena wall. This time, Elias did not dodge away. As the shield, a slab of metal that weighed more than he did, bore down on him, he moved toward it. In a motion so swift it was almost a blur, he dropped to one knee, sliding on the sand. His small blade, held in a reverse grip, flashed out. It did not clang against the shield. It did not try to punch through the durasteel of Korlag's greaves. The stiletto found the one place Elias had been aiming for since the fight began. The narrow, less armored gap behind the champion's ankle, where the massive, cable-like Achilles tendon connected his calf muscle to his heel. The blade, forged from a hyperdense human alloy and honed to a monomolecular edge, sank into the hilt. Elias didn't slash. He twisted. There was no explosion of gore, no spray of ichor that the crowd craved. There was only a quiet, sickeningly wet popping sound. Korlag's roar of fury died in his throat, replaced by a sharp, gargling cry of pure agony and shock. His right leg, the anchor for his immense weight and power, buckled instantly. The perfectly coordinated charge dissolved into a clumsy, stumbling fall. The vexed champion, the unbroken, crashed to the sand with a deafening cacophony of metal and chitin. His power scythe sputtered and died as his hand lost its grip. A stunned silence fell over the cauldron of stars. For a moment, 100,000 beings held their collective breath. They had just seen their greatest champion felled, not by a mightier blow or a more potent energy blast, but by a tiny blade in a place they had never even considered a target. Elias Thorn was already moving. He did not gloat. He did not posture for the crowd. He flowed around the fallen Cathar, his stiletto held ready. Korlag, bellowing in a mixture of pain and shame, tried to push himself up with his 3 good limbs. He swung his cleaver wildly from his position on the ground. Elias easily danced out of its range, his eyes cold and analytical. He was no longer looking at an opponent. He was looking at a problem to be solved, a system to be dismantled. He darted in again. Korlag, anticipating another attack on his remaining good leg, moved to protect it. But Elias wasn't aiming for the leg. His blade flashed in the artificial sunlight, tracing a swift, precise arc. It struck the back of Korlag's left knee joint, another area where the thick armor plates had to give way to flexible synthetic ligaments to allow for movement. Again, the blade sank deep. Again, Elias twisted his wrist with surgical precision. The sound of rending tissue was lost in Korlag's agonized scream. His left leg was now useless, the joint severed. He was immobilized from the waist down. The silence in the arena was now absolute. It was a heavy, profound quiet, broken only by the pained, ragged breathing of the fallen champion. The crowd was no longer watching a sporting event. They were witnessing an execution, but of a kind they had never imagined. It was a cold, methodical, and deeply personal deconstruction. Xylo, the announcer, was speechless. His subdermal lights had frozen in a pale, sickly blue. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. What could he say? Behold, the human demonstrates a masterful understanding of Cathar battlefield anatomy. Elias circled the downed warrior, who now could only prop himself up on his 4 arms, his useless legs splayed out behind him like a broken toy. Korlag was a being of pure martial pride, and what was happening to him was worse than 1,000 clean deaths. It was humiliation on a biological level. "Fight me, you coward," the champion roared, his voice cracking with pain. "Face me. Stop skulking like a carrion eater." Elias ignored him. He saw the upper left arm, the one that held the shield, tense as Korlag tried to drag himself forward. He darted in. The blade was a silver flicker. It didn't target the armor on the forearm or the bicep. It found the soft, vulnerable tissue of the armpit, plunging deep into the complex nexus of tendons and ligaments that controlled the shoulder. Another twist. Another agonized cry from Korlag. The shield arm went limp, the heavy slab of durasteel falling to the sand with a dull thud, one arm down. The crowd was shifting in their seats. The Cathar were a warrior race, but their concept of combat was tied to glorious charges, overwhelming firepower, honorable duels, and spectacular finishing blows. This was none of those things. This was methodical. It was passionless. It felt less like a fight and more like a vivisection. The human was not defeating their champion. He was taking him apart, piece by piece, leaving the conscious, agonized mind to witness the systematic ruination of its own body. Lyraxus, the Grand Vizier, was pale beneath his chiton. "Your Eminence, this is obscene. It is dishonorable. He does not even grant him the dignity of a clean strike." Emperor Malachor did not take his eyes off the sand. His voice was a low, chilling whisper. "You are mistaken, Vizier. This is the highest form of honor a warrior can show an opponent." Stared at him, aghast. "Honor? Eminence, this is torture." "No," Malachor corrected. "Torture is inflicting pain for the sake of pain. This is a lesson. He is showing us what he is capable of without taking a life. He is disabling a war machine with the precision of a master artisan. He is telling us that armor is irrelevant. That size is irrelevant. That strength is irrelevant. He is telling us that knowledge, true, deep, anatomical knowledge, is the only weapon that matters. It is the most profound display of martial philosophy I have ever witnessed." Down below, Elias continued his work. Korlag's lower right arm, the one with the spiked gauntlet, lashed out. Elias met it not with a block, but with a delicate step inside the arc of the swing. His stiletto found the wrist joint, severing the tendons that controlled the champion's grip. The gauntlet, still clenched in a fist, was now uselessly locked in place. 2 arms down. Now only the cleaver and the spiked gauntlet remained as threats, both on the lower arms. Korlag, desperate and sobbing with a mixture of pain and frustration, swept his cleaver low across the sand. Elias leaped over it, a feat of agility that drew a collective gasp from the silent crowd. He landed softly behind the champion's arm and with 2 quick, precise cuts, severed the major muscles in the forearm. The cleaver dropped from a hand that could no longer hold it, 3 arms down. Only the spiked gauntlet on the lower right arm remained. Korlag, now little more than a torso propped up by one shuddering limb, looked up at the human who stood before him. Through his pain-hazed vision, he saw no triumph in the human's eyes, no rage, no glee. He saw only a calm, focused intensity, the look of a surgeon about to make the final incision. "Please," Korlag whispered, the word a ragged, broken thing. "End it." Thorn paused. He looked down at the ruined champion, the symbol of an empire's might, now helpless on the sand. He looked at the 4 useless limbs, the discarded weapons. He had made his point. He took a step back, raised his small blade, and showed it to the silent arena. It was barely stained. He then calmly wiped the blade on his trousers, sheathed it in a small scabbard on his belt, and turned his back on the defeated Korlag. He did not deliver the killing blow. He left the unbroken, broken but alive, a living testament to his own deconstruction. The silence that followed was a physical entity. It pressed down on the cauldron of stars, heavier and more profound than any sound. It was a silence born of shock, of dawning horror, and of a terrifying, empire-shaking understanding. 100,000 Cathar stared down at the human, a small, unarmored figure walking calmly towards the exit. And for the first time, they felt a sensation utterly foreign to their species. A cold, prickling dread. In the Emperor's box, Lyraxus was trembling. He refused the kill, the ultimate insult. He has left Korlag to live in this state. The dishonor. Emperor Valerius Malachor slowly leaned back in his throne. A deep, shuddering breath escaped his powerful lungs. He looked at the humans retreating back, then at the living ruin of his greatest champion, and then out at the sea of silent, stunned faces of his people. He finally understood the full scope of the demonstration. He finally understood the nature of the soft-skinned, ambitious species from the Sol system. He turned to his vizier, his ancient eyes filled with a terrible, newfound clarity. "You are still thinking in our terms, Lyraxus. Honor, glory, spectacle." The Emperor's voice was low, heavy with the weight of revelation. "We gave them a game and they gave us a message." Looked at him, confused. "A message, Your Eminence." "Yes," Malachor said, the sound a deep, resonant knell that seemed to signal the end of an age. "The message is this: we do not play. When we fight, it is not for glory or for the roar of the crowd. It is for the methodical, systematic, and complete nullification of our enemy's ability to fight back. This is what we did to your greatest warrior with one small blade. Imagine what we would do to your armies, to your fleets, to your worlds." He did not kill Korlag because a corpse is a monument to a moment. A living, breathing, permanently disabled victim that is a message that endures. Emperor stood, all 4 of his arms hanging limp at his sides. He gazed out at his empire's heart, the cauldron of stars, and saw not a symbol of strength, but a monument to a profound and dangerous misunderstanding. The game was over. A new, far more serious one had just begun. The aftermath in the Imperial Citadel was as quiet and cold as the arena had been. The crowds dispersed not with the usual boisterous energy of post-game revelry, but with a somber, unnerved haste. They spoke in hushed tones, avoiding eye contact, as if the shared experience was a source of collective shame. The name Korlag was not uttered as a tragic hero, but whispered like a grim cautionary tale. In a sterile, white medical bay deep within the Citadel, a team of the Imperium's finest surgeons and biotechnicians worked over the broken body of the Vex champion. Their reports, delivered with grave expressions to the Imperial court, were clinical and devastating. "The damage is precise, Your Eminence," the chief surgeon, a wizened Cathar with delicate manipulators, explained to Malachar and his council. "It is unlike any battle wound we have ever encountered. There is minimal collateral damage. The blade, whatever its composition, did not slash or tear so much as it parted. The major tendons in all 4 limbs have been completely severed from their anchor points. The ligamentary structures in the knee and shoulder joints are irrevocably shredded. We can reconstruct, of course. We can implant synthetic cabling and actuators. He may walk again after a fashion. He may be able to lift objects. But wield a weapon? Fight? Never. The fine motor control, the explosive power, it has been permanently excised." It was not butchery, it was erasure. Emperor Malachar dismissed the surgeon, the grim report confirming what he already knew. He sat with Lyraxis in his private meditation chamber, the stardusted swirl of the galactic core visible through a massive viewport. "They call their martial disciplines science," Malachar mused, his voice distant. "We called it art. That is the core of our mistake. Art is passionate, expressive, grand. Science is cold, repeatable, and ruthlessly efficient. We staged a poetry recital, and they responded with a chemical formula for poison." Who had spent the hours since the contest in a state of agitated shock, finally found his voice. "What do we do? The human thorn is being held in the diplomatic suites as you commanded. The Terran Alliance ambassador is requesting an audience. Do we retaliate? Do we condemn this act of barbarism? Barbarism." Malachar turned his great head to face his vizier. "Was it barbaric? He used no illegal weapons. He did not attack before the signal. He did not attack after his opponent was fully incapacitated. By the ancient laws of the cauldron, he was the very model of a disciplined combatant. It is not his methods that disturb us, Lyraxis. It is his philosophy." "A philosophy of terror," Lyraxis spat. "Philosophy of victory," Malachar countered softly. "Absolute, undeniable, and economical. He expended the minimum possible energy to achieve the maximum possible strategic result. The result was not to win the bout, but to win the negotiation that follows. He has just written the preamble to every treaty we will ever sign with their species." Meanwhile, in the opulent but sterile diplomatic suite, Elias Thorne sat on a low couch, sipping a cup of water. Across from him sat Ambassador Chen, a woman with graying hair and eyes that held the weary patience of a career diplomat. The room was soundproofed and shielded, a small bubble of Terran sovereignty within the Cathar Citadel. "The reports from our embedded agents in the city are potent," Chen said, her voice calm. "The word they're using most often is unnerved. Not angry, not vengeful, unnerved. You accomplished the objective, Colonel." Elias nodded, his gaze fixed on the water in his cup. He still wore the simple trousers from the arena. He had showered, but he could still feel the phantom sensation of sand on his skin, still smell the coppery tang of Korlag's hemolymph. "The risk was calculated," Elias said, his voice flat. "Their culture revolves around a misunderstanding of combat. They see it as a performance. We see it as a problem to be solved. I just solved the problem they presented." "And the method?" Chen asked, her gaze steady. "Leaving him alive?" Elias finally looked up. His eyes, so cold and focused in the arena, now held a deep, profound weariness. "Killing him would have been easier, cleaner. It would have made him a martyr, a fallen hero. They could have built statues to him, used his glorious death to fuel their righteous anger. They understand death." He took a slow breath. "They don't understand helplessness. Their entire psychology is built on strength, power, dominance. A warrior society doesn't have a cultural script for dealing with their greatest champion being rendered as useful as a newborn, left to live out his days as a symbol of utter impotence. Every time one of them looks at Korlag, from now until the day he dies of old age, they won't be reminded of a glorious battle. They'll be reminded of what we can do, that we can unmake them without killing them, that we can turn their greatest strengths into their most painful liabilities. It was brutal, Elias, Chen stated, not as an accusation but as a fact. War is brutal, he replied, his voice hardening slightly. And this was the first battle of a war we are trying desperately to avoid. They needed to know the cost, not in lives, not in ships. They have more of both than we do. They needed to know the psychological cost. They needed to see that we will not fight them on their terms. We won't meet their armored charges with bigger armor. We will find the gaps. The tendons, the supply lines, the communication nodes, the power grids. We will not raise their cities. We will turn the lights off. We will not destroy their armies. We will sever their ability to move, to communicate, to fight. We will leave them intact but inert. A living empire completely and utterly paralyzed. That was the message in the sand. Back in the Emperor's meditation chamber, Malachar gestured to the star chart. Their territory is small, but it is adjacent to the Varan Nebula. Control of that nebula is the key to our next phase of expansion. We believed we could intimidate them into a subservient alliance or crush them if they refused. Now, Lyraxus asked, his voice barely a whisper. Now we must reconsider everything, the Emperor stated. We have always fought wars of attrition and overwhelming force. Our tactics are based on shattering the enemy's armor, on breaking their lines. But how do you fight an enemy who ignores the armor and goes for the tendon? How do you wage war against a foe whose primary strategy is to dismantle you, not destroy you? It's a paradigm of conflict we are utterly unprepared for. He looked at his own 4 powerful arms, the symbols of his species' might. For the first time in his long life, he felt a sliver of vulnerability. His arms were strong, but they were connected by shoulders. His legs were powerful, but they were anchored by tendons. His empire was vast, but it was connected by trade routes and communication relays. All of them, he now realized, were targets. Grant the Terran ambassador her audience, the Emperor commanded, his voice resolute. Treat her with the utmost respect. Open negotiations for a mutual non-aggression pact and a delineated border at the Varan Nebula. Was stunned. We will cede the nebula, just like that. Because of one fight. Because of one message. Malachar corrected him, his voice grim. The Terrans did not send us a warrior today, Lyraxus. They sent us a teacher. And the lesson was that there are fates far worse than a glorious death in battle. We would be wise to learn it. As Ambassador Chen left to meet with the Emperor, Elias Thorn remained in the suite, alone with his thoughts. He stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the alien architecture of the Cathar Citadel. He had done his duty. He had delivered the message. He had perhaps saved billions of lives on both sides by performing one act of calculated, unforgettable violence. He felt no pride, only the heavy weight of his actions. He had won the day, not with the strength of his arm, but with the cold, precise knowledge of where to place the knife to make a giant fall. And he knew, with a certainty that chilled him to his core, that the Cathar would never forget it. The age of honorable games was over. The age of cautious respect had just begun.